Looking at judgment in a really radical and experiential way. It's not always easy. I don't do it perfectly. Ties into the timelines and other aspects of very esoteric advances that have been made within the community, if you will. This echoes aspects of ancient guru yoga. When you can work with it to its fullness, it just creates a profound shift. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Reflection Connection podcast. I'm your host, Vince Jameson. So today we have an interesting topic. We're going to be expanding on the book, which I introduced last week. And I'm entitling today's episode, so this is episode number 8. And the title is Shaping Your World Experience. And this comes from my personal working with the practice from the book. And as I've shared already, the practice, the working practice is the most important aspect to it, not the figures mentioned. The working practice is a toolbox, an energetic technique, a toolbox that you can use in real time as you're moving through life, either in the moment or afterward. And it really does shift your experience. And I want to go down this path for a moment because I say these words very precisely. Your experience. I think that most people now have come across the idea of some calling this that we're living in a matrix, right? And that automatically creates associations with the movie. And there are certain aspects to this which made the movie what it is, just like certain aspects of our technology is based off of our physiology. That'll be for another day, but it's not always known to the public. And what I want to get into here is the viewpoint that each of our experiences are projected and created by the internal aspects of ourselves. So you are real and you are having your experience. I am real and I am having my experience. There is also the aspect of your perception of me, which is generally probably not as real. This is going woo-woo for some people, but I'm just going to keep going down the path. Vice versa, because we are projected outward and we are viewing everything that's coming into our senses and filtering through our sensors through a number of different filters. And this isn't new information. Most people are aware of this, right? Even to the extent of, let's say I see a dog and you see a dog, and I might see beautiful, adorable lovingness, and you might see scary creature who's going to bite you and go for your throat, right? We're seeing the same thing. That's kind of a bigger example. What I'm speaking with is a little more refined. And what I'm saying is similar to like colors, what I've learned to be like blue, right? This pen with blue on it. We both might experience viewing this pen, but if you were to look through my eyes, you might see this differently and still call it blue than what I see and call blue. And there are many, 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 many aspects to that. If once you start getting into the concepts of timelines and multi-dimensions, which are happening all at the same time, multiple aspects where the idea of every possibility is being played out all at once, and our, I guess, conscious anchoring is anchored to or can move through different timelines as if there were like a million different versions of this going on, like me speaking on the podcast, right? And as my emotions shift, I might shift to different ones, or as my ideas or my intention or my will might shift to different ones, and it seems seamless. It seems like there's this one continuous track that you're going along, but there are actually many different convergences that are branching off as you move through or just choose. That's an entangled road to continue going down, in the sense of, if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you're probably confused by what I just said. What I want to emphasize, which is a little simpler, is many years ago I heard the expression, if a tree falls in the forests around the world, does it exist, or did it actually fall? Something to that respect. And I used to hear people say no, and I would be really bothered by this, like deeply bothered. I'd be like, no, but the tree, you're not the only one. If you don't observe the tree, right, and the tree falls, then did it actually fall? And I was like, you're not the only one. The tree is innately valuable in and of itself, and it has its expression, as does the forest. And so, of course. And there's the flip side too, but in your experience, in your reality, it didn't happen. And so the answer is both. It's a trick question. The answer is both. It's like many things in this mysterious universe that keeps on unfolding. It's yes and, right? It's both. It's yes and this. And it's often the and is a paradox. It's a polar opposite. It's something which seems to be conflicting with it. It's the light and the dark. It's not the dark or the light. It's both. And so when we are moving through our experience, a lot of what we see, a lot of what, I'll use myself, as I'm moving through my experience, a lot of what I see, a lot of what I witness are aspects of my internal makeup, aspects that are personal, that are inherited physically, that are inherited culturally, archetypally, right, of our collective. They are reflections of what I have learned and what I believe, more so. And many of these are hidden. Many are hidden. For those of you who understand the concepts and the construct of our mind, most of what runs our daily experience, most of what runs our actions and our reactions is subconscious. It's things that we learned. It's somebody says something, and without even thinking of it, we react or we feel triggered. And that might have triggered something from, when we're 5 and now we're 50, right? And so we're not seeing the world as it is, where somebody else might be right next to you and might experience the same thing, and they're not triggered because they don't have that experience from when they're 50, which created a certain chain of beliefs that they're then filtering the whole world through, right? And it changes your world experience, and very much it changes your world in that regard. And so what I'm trying to posit is that each of us are very much living within our own worlds, although there is a collective construct of what it is to be human, and the variations and the different expressions that make up what we consider the world, right? The experience of it is completely individual. And even if you were a twin, which grew up in the exact same way, from the exact same womb, from the exact same parents, and lived in the exact same bedroom until you were maybe 18 with the other, and went to the same schools and had the same circles of friends, you still are having your own experience, because there are ever so slight, subtle tweaks to that. Nobody has an exact same experience. And you could have had a different experience when you were younger, different from your twin, that shifted everything. It could be something that was traumatic, which many people unfortunately go through, and it could even be something which was a positive thing, which gave you a natural inclination or a confidence that was unusually strong for someone of your age, right? You see so many people look to musicians or models or something like that, or actors, young actors, where it's this certain people which have an unusual amount of not only talent, but also to confidence to carry the talent at a very young age. I know and have known, especially being in New York, growing up in New York City, so many people who were literally models or could be models that just didn't have the confidence, which most people don't at 17 years old, right? To go there and strut and like be totally confident about your body, especially when models and especially like women, for instance, models who might have harsher bone structure and like a smaller chest or super skinny and tall might in their community where they grew up be seen as awkward. And that's probably shifting as our culture is more saturated with media. But my point is, I think you get where I'm coming from. And so we are very much having our own experience. And although our experiences might collide or be, let's say, certain elements and synchronicities and prior agreements, all kinds of things woven into this like amazingly intricate fabric that we call life. And when we come together, if I'm meeting with you in person, we're still we're coming together, our worlds are coming together, but our experiences are not always. So if you and I were to meet and to, let's say, go to a park and share a park bench and have a conversation by ourselves and have a vantage point, a view of whatever, a beautiful pond and some ducks or whatever it is, right? At the same time, and we're the only ones there, we're sharing a moment, but our experiences are still different because what I will notice and what you will notice will be invariably different. And even if we wind up noticing a lot of things, and let's say we get along and we really connect, then in those cases, we're usually agreeing on or having the same values about certain things, which are either important to us or enjoyable. And so then we kind of like mesh and we feel like we get each other, right? Because you're getting my world and I'm getting your world. If you're like, I hate ducks and this pond is gross and blah, 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 bench and the sun's in my eyes, I'm gonna be like, okay, I'll see you later. Bye. Go home. But if we're having the same mutual enjoyment, right? So still though, our worlds are not still the same. And the reason why I'm kind of harping on this same notion is we have been taught, or we have, for lack of just information, experienced this as a passive unfolding, if you will, right? So we're moving through life, we're aware of certain choices that maybe are available to us, and we're aware of certain decisions that we can make. And some of us are making certain decisions and some of us aren't. And so that leads to different outcomes, right? We all get that. But it seems as if life is coming at us because, again, all of our senses, our eyes, ears, everything, nerve endings are pointed outward. We're projected out of our center. And so everything seems to be coming at us. What I'm posing is that actually most of what we're seeing is coming from within us and being radiated out around us. And we also have a shared kind of larger framework, right? But as we're interacting with that, other people are interacting that, but you have this personal filter, this personal bubble, if you will. And I've used this term quite a bit. I clearly, and I recommend living in your own bubble to a certain extent. interacting with the outside world and having your space and your voice and doing what you can and what you wish and being aware, but not allowing it to wash over you, right? You can spend an afternoon scrolling, right? But when it starts to turn into doom scrolling, then you've allowed it to wash over you. You haven't stayed within your bubble. When you're allowing the algorithm to be what it is rather than you actually choosing in the moment and choosing not to look at something, or if you want to look at it, but then say, don't show me any more like this or whatever it is so that you can shape your algorithm. That's a different aspect. The same thing, choosing to whatever extent you can where you live, what kind of community you interact with. If you can't immediately change your external community, you have so many communities online, and those are choices, right? Do you want to continually go down rabbit holes of negativity and look at everything horrible in the world? Do you want to watch the news, any channel? Or do you want to look at what's positive? Do you want to support people and businesses that are making wonderful, wonderful things happen in the world? And there are so, so many people who are really doing things the best way that they know and that anybody else knows. And yeah, just creating great change. Do you want to look at what's working in your life? Do you want to look at, you know, everything around you? And what are you making those things mean, right? Not only what they appear to be, but what are you making them mean? And what are you making them mean for you as well as like long term? Is this something which is scary and it's going to be the end? Or is this something which is like, okay, this is an issue which I'd like to find a solution to, or I would like us to find a solution to, or I'm not happy with this, but I'm going to concentrate on something else. Because where you put your attention is completely up to you, and where you put your attention is a powerful, powerful focus. We have been schooled for countless generations to diminish who we are and what we're capable of. And part of that is as simple as what you believe about yourself and who you are within this context. What's coming up for me now, and it's funny because it's come up for me so many times. I was a child of the 80s. I know there's a newer version. I didn't see it, but I won't speak about that. There was a movie that came out when I was a kid, and it was called The Never-Ending Story. And I think many people are aware of this. So in a nutshell, for those who aren't, it's this boy, I believe his name is Sebastian, or just Bastian, and he finds this book. He has like some trouble at home. He finds this book, he's reading it, and he gets sucked into this like world almost where he's experiencing all of these fantastic things, and there's this force which is kind of gobbling everything up, and it's this negativity, right? Fast forward to the end, and he's the key, spoiler alert, but he's the key to save this world. And as he's reading this, he's like, but that's crazy. I'm just a boy. I'm just a little boy. What can I do? And there's a princess who is screaming to him, Bastion, call my name, right? For those of you who are familiar with the movie. And I was so moved by this, even as a kid, and I didn't know why. And I wound up seeing it a couple of years ago. And I was just like, wow, this is huge. This is huge. This is all of us. You know, this is one of those things where this is touching on archetypal kinds of conversations within the collective. And yeah, it's something that I've lived. It's something that even along my path, it's like me. Yeah, no, I get it, but I'm not ready, right? I'm not there yet. I'm not that. What am I gonna do? Like me, right? And it's like, no, everybody has the ability to shape a lot, to affect a lot. to transform a lot, largely by your focus and by your belief systems. And many people are aware of the idea of this like holographic reality, right? Where it could be like infinitely split and it still is a version of the whole. And that, in a sense, can also describe aspects of what some people call God or the universe, right? But like as above, so below, as within, without. And so in every piece, in the, one celled bacteria in like the dog poop outside and the goldfish and the whale and the president, the president and the guru and the stars, right? They all have aspects of this whole within. When you continually look closer and closer, even at the human or an animals or anybody's, at the cellular structure, you go closer and closer and closer in magnification, and it starts to branch off to cells and then molecules and then electrons, and then there's like space, right? And you can look at it as it's almost like it's all of these internal solar systems within each cell. It's amazing. And I'm getting off track here, but my point is that your reality, what you see through your day, what you come into contact with, if you're living with people, how they show up for you, how they show up in context of who they are, you can shape all of that. All of that. Truly. There are two major keys that were given in the book. One of them, a lot of people seem to be having a lot more comfort with than actually I did. So as I shared, elsewhere and in the book, part of the channeled material was clearly speaking to me as well as to, I think, many others who might have a similar experience where there are ideas of hierarchy. And so a lot of people will read this and they'll think of like pop culture. And so the idea of no one is above or below you. So they'll go, yes, that's right. Taylor Swift is not, and it doesn't matter, Taylor Swift, it could be anybody, but Taylor Swift is not above me, even though she's like on this stage and she's, beautiful and wealthy and whatever. And the homeless man is not below me. He's just struggling and have a hard time. That is 100% valid and correct. And that is a huge component of it. And that can go into many different aspects of both extremities, which some people would see as extreme, but there's no value in it, right? There's no like, they're like a million shades of gray. There's not a black and a white with this. So to the example that I just gave, yes, Taylor Swift is not above you. Neither is any guru or any avatar or any, if you come from a background, God or angel, which was actually given in the channel. Even the most glorious angel is not above you, nor are you below it, nor is it below you. This was speaking to me somewhat, and I have addressed this because I've looked into many different belief systems and I wouldn't even go say religions, but practices. And there are often charts where it's normally read as this is the most powerful under the all that is. And then there's this is the next powerful, and this is the next powerful. And it's not necessarily that that's not the case, but it doesn't mean that that's above and below. And we have inherited as humans, because it was planted, it was given to us. We inherited this concept of God making, and that we are always below something. And so that which was to deal with our creator was above us. And so we needed to earn, and we needed to behave, and we needed to follow the rules, right? And we needed to then be good enough. And one day we can maybe get to a place where we're good enough, where then we can be worthy. And then there are some that are above others, and they're, can have more because they're better, right? And this idea of like earning, and like, let me pray so that I can get something. And if I'm really good, and if I really follow all your rules, then maybe you, Almighty, will give to me, little old me. It's not the case. That has broken down quite a bit as religion and religious context has broken down over the course of decades and generations. And again, to my original example, that idea of, I think most people can see, at least philosophically, that these people who we might put on pedestals, this wonderful actor or whatever, this is usually someone within our society, celebrity, is not better than or above me. Yet many people still act like they are. I mean, the way that they act is just. And at the same time, too, I think the harder aspect is the idea of non-judgment, which the book equally addresses, and the vice versa, below you. And so when we judge, we are putting someone below us to a certain extent. We are putting that person or that thing as lesser in that moment. This can be taken to really big extremes, and it's useful to do so. I live in the US. We have a really challenging, for many of us, some people, everyone knows we have a very polarized political state in the world, in much of the world. And I find our elected leader quite challenging in many ways. I also don't think about him quite often, actually very often at all. But when I do, and I see things and I hear things, it's often challenging. I bring this up because what I'm posing here is that what I'm seeing are aspects of myself reflected within him. He exists. What I'm experiencing of him and what you might be experiencing of him are different things. No question about that. Who he is for me and who he is for you are different people. No question about that. We might hear of two of the same thing that was decided on or proclaimed or done. You and I will feel completely differently about that, or even similarly, but still there'd be some difference. What we come at when his name is said, how we feel, what we believe, how we filter that name alone, the vibration of the name, as well as the image, as well as anything to do with similar things, will be different. And so very much who he is in my world is different than who he is in your world. To a certain extent, how he shows up in my world has to do with me. There are aspects to him that trigger certain aspects within me that cause a reaction. There are aspects to him which bring up certain conversations within me. Those are aspects which echo the deepest aspects and recesses of myself, both the subconscious as well as, I'll say, I don't have necessarily wording for this, but you'll get what I mean. My subconscious, as well as, I'll say, the subconscious of the collective, the subconscious of humanity, and maybe even aspects of universal subconscious. Ancient memories, old ways, aspects which you might look and say, but I would never do that. And I don't think that way. I think opposite. Yes, I'm not taking away from that. But have you ever, ever, in the slightest way, in the most abstract way, right? I'll speak for myself. I know that I have, whether it was in childhood or in even, younger adulthood, acted selfishly, chose something with only my concern, wanted to spite someone, whether I even did it or not, like whether I even went through it. I even went through with the idea, right? Whether I even acted upon it or not. There were seconds where maybe someone did me wrong or crossed me that I didn't like, and a split second of just like, a little thought of revenge and a little satisfaction in that. Could have even been split second. Doesn't matter. We want to, I think, because of our society, because of the imposed religious beliefs upon us for so long as society, we want to weigh each aspect. We want to either make things black and white or color or judge them towards how dark or white they are, right? So like, this is okay, and this is okay, and this is okay, but that's not okay, even though it's along the same evolutionary thinking. And even if you look at that context of like what's right and wrong, that's changed even within our recorded history. What was done in ancient Greece, which was only a couple of hundred years ago, right? Or even like Victorian times, which was even sooner, or some things we would never ever do. Like we would be like child labor or other things with children, or I mean, lots of stuff that were just everyday normal. Slaves of all kinds, and like, so as much as our world seems to be at times just so awful in certain respects, I don't think that most people realize how actually better it is than it was. And they wish that they could sometimes go back to the ignorance that they had before they knew these things. But if you really look at the context of it, especially as you're going back generations or even a couple hundred years, which really isn't that long ago, the way things were generally done and what was acceptable was just wildly worse. And so, and aspects were certainly, there were some aspects that I'm sure that you can find that were better, right? Or more desirable. But my point is that what you're experiencing, you have the ability to shape. And so, again, getting back to my example of me, right? So, one of the things that was given in the book was most people understand the idea of triggers, and they understand the idea of your external environment has aspects that can be reflective, right? Those are things which have been trickled into the awareness of many throughout time and psychology, and many people who have reached mastery have said aspects of this. But the interesting context and the nuance that the material of the book came and why I chose to move forward with it is the energetic practice that goes along with it. And one of the things that Yeshua said in his channeled material, which again, the person doesn't matter. The emphasis was clearly put on the practice, and that's what I'm trying to bring forward. But I wanted to acknowledge where it did come from, which I did in the book. What was given was this idea of seeing them as they're acting out, as they're showing up, as they're a disaster, and they're causing such grief. And there's walls being put up, and there's ice stuff, right? And there's whatever. And I'm not getting into political stuff, even though I've touched on a couple of points. I'm saying these things don't resonate well with me. Whatever your things might be, whatever you might be seeing in the world that might be different from what I'm saying, use those examples for yourself. You see those characters, and it's useful to look at them as characters because that is what they are. And see them choose with your internal will, with your power of choice, with your power of control of what you can in this moment now, as you become conscious, because you go out of consciousness into like a trance state when you're reacting, right? It triggers something and you have this whatever play out. When you return, you go into your consciousness and you just say, this is not what I want to be. This is not okay with me. In that moment, choose to actively visualize or sense or see them as being happy. See them as being well. See them as the most radiant, beautiful people that have ever been, whatever that vision is. You can, this is a great time to pull from all of the spiritual or New Age or even religious iconography. See them glowing, see them with a beautiful, like shining white aura and like radiant in their heart and the heart expanding and like light coming out of their heart. Yes, I'm talking about Trump. Yes, I'm talking about, all of the leaders who are just troublemakers, all of the, even in the book, which you call them the nasties or the despicables, is something that I've called them before. See these people who were the most, whatever you consider the most awful person for whatever reason. The person who's killing children in Congo or Gaza or anywhere, or the axe murderer. I'm trying to think of extremes that are ugly, and I don't like that energy, but I'm trying to make a point here. You see them radiant. And what you're doing is twofold. Number one, you're using your internal awareness and your internal light, which is a true part of yourself in reality, to shine upon them, that person which is, in a sense, in your experience, fumbling in the dark, because they wouldn't be making those decisions if not. You are, you're pausing your judgment towards that person who is playing out such trauma, echoes of trauma, and echoes of darkness. And you are shining a light upon them to allow for the energetic opportunity for them to see more clearly. And in doing that, for them, you are also, in turn, shining a light on that subconscious aspect of yourself, wherever it came from, that is so hidden from you that maybe you can see just the smallest tinge of, yes, I was selfish once or 1,000 times, right? And this person is acting out in such selfishness to such an extreme that it took that extreme to catch your attention. It took that extreme playing out in your world, in your experience, that that extreme was necessary to catch your attention to be triggered by it so that you can see that there's also something here for you. And when you shine that light upon them, you're creating an opportunity for them. You're, in a sense, saying, I don't like what you do. I don't approve of what you do. I don't love what you do. But I love the internal expression of who you truly are that is underneath this challenging, quite possibly damaged, hurt, traumatized aspect, which is playing out in all of these adult, powerful, ugly ways. And you are shining the light on yourself. So you are, in a sense, providing an opportunity for them while also giving opportunity to yourself. In my experience, since I've been working with this, it's not always immediate. I have had experiences where this is immediate and it's actually like Freaky Friday. It's like, what the hell? Okay, that was that. Things have shifted. I mentioned in the last podcast, and she won't be listening to this. So my mother was a very polarizing personality in my life. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful aspects to her, and really, really incredibly, incredibly, incredibly challenging aspects. I was working on this with her, and she showed up completely differently. It took a while. It took a couple weeks of me just actively working on it, just visualizing her differently. What I actually did, and I'll share this because again, she's not going to listen to this, but what I use, what works for me is I try to use play, even in the most harsh circumstances. There are a number of different reasons for that. One is to relieve the sense of the hierarchy and the harsh circumstance a little bit, just take the edge off. And the other is that that's the way my mind and the idea of visualization tends to work best for me. So I thought, okay, like, I think my literal words were like, this effing woman won't stop. Okay, just to share where I was coming from. And then I was like, caught it. And I was like, no, no. And then I said her name and I was like, I'm not going to say her name on here, Queen of Heaven. And I say this with sarcasm as well as there was like a sarcastic aspect of it, but then there was also like a reality aspect of it in both my visualization as well as I'll pose to you, as well as who she truly is. One of the things that came up in the book, and also which I shared, and I really love this analogy, is the idea of, that when we die or transition, we get to see everyone who we experienced in our life as who they truly are. So any personality that we've ever come across, not only our family members or our friends or that, the person who we fought with, right? Not that, but also to these personalities out there, right? These personalities who injected themselves into the cultural or time construct that we lived within in our lifetime, right? So like everyone from Mommy Dearest Joan Crawford, right? Which I just pegged her to judgment within the name, to to different leaders, to different figures that were public, to Rockefeller or Uncle Bob, right? Like people who are on television, Lucille Ball, whoever. And so the idea, the way that I put it through in the book was we show up and it's like the Golden Globes Awards dinner, and everyone is there in their finest. And they're all sitting with each other. And you have Helen Keller, who came with Sammy Davis Jr., and you have at one table, and you've got Gandhi along with Hitler at another table. And you've got Mary Tyler Moore, and she arrived with Freddy Krueger, who's all dressed up and cleaned up, no longer burnt. And they're all at their best, and they're all laughing or talking and congratulating each other on their roles that they played, and what an amazing part that they played in this amazing story, and how difficult it must have been to put yourself in that role, to transform yourself, you beautiful actress, and transform yourself into this horrible, vicious mother who abused her children so violently and was so harsh, drug addicted and everything, right? And they play, and then they come out of the role. They come out of this. They played this part to their fullest, and they come out of this. And they need to, well, they reconcile it, and then they come back to who they truly are. And so what I'm posing is that who we truly are all these magnificent, there's no other word to say, but God people, shining bright. And we choose to have these experiences. And we choose setups, both as collectives as well as individuals, highly, highly, highly orchestrated in such detail that it just blows the mind. We can't conceive of the coordinated detail. And part of that plays out in the influence of the heavenly bodies and the stars at the time of our birth, and our souls that choose that time in order to have those influences, as well as taking into consideration the likely path that the collective is going through and will go through in those years to come. The different options that are available for someone who is born in a certain location at a certain time in a certain place, and what that can look like and what that can give. How being born into this family versus that family, and even within the family, having certain predilections which create different types of relationship, or certain experiences within different relationships that will color in a negative way or a positive way, in a challenging way or a beneficial way, always a beneficial way. All of this, even the ugliest, is in some regards, as hard as it is to hear, beneficial. But how this can play out and how this can offer to us a great challenge with which we choose in our higher self, in our soul, to want to work past. I was a beautiful princess. I'm just using this example. I was a beautiful princess. I was the most beautiful woman in the world at the time in my last life. That was hard in its own way. I had a lot of limitations, and I wish I was just more plain. Maybe I'm going to have the experience. Maybe I want to be an ugly person. Let me be a leper. Sometimes we probably think too extreme, more extreme than what our personality wishes we would have, right? A little more moderation in a path or a choice is often seen as a better example, a better path to walk through. But the more extreme that it is, the greater the opportunity, the greater the risk, the greater the potential reward, right? And even if the lifetime was, to what most people see as extraordinarily awful, the benefit that can be extracted by that, by the soul, by the larger, aspect of who we are can be of really great benefit. It's not necessary, but many choose it, and vice versa. You know, um, in my experience, and I've spoken about this numerous times, I have the experience of I don't. There are two ways of viewing it. There's the idea of a past life, and there's the idea of a concurrent or a parallel life, which I agree more with the latter. I think that as there are lifetimes that are placed within a linear construct, but they're all going on now. There's dimensional realities, which I think overlap throughout time. And I experience this idea of a bleed through, I call it, which is a stronger connection to the Tibetan practitioner, most likely a Tibetan Lama from the Vajrayana tradition. And this has been revealed and continues to be revealed in small ways. And one of the things I knew very early on, which I've spoken about this, I think I even spoke about it in my first episode of the podcast, as well as in the book. One of my most vivid experiences when this first happened, and then shortly afterward, I was living in New York City, and they had these really wonderful events where Tibetan monks would come in. Often it's a major hub, of course, New York City for a lot of things. And I remember going to these things, I was attracted to them. And there was this one time where they were doing this really profound offering, and this very special person, from this lineage came, and they were doing this very rare event, and I was in the middle of it. And I just heard audibly, you don't have to do this again. And I really feel, and I still do, but I really felt in that moment, it was I was given an awareness. It was like a download. Many lifetimes of wanting to connect with all that is, with wanting to have a profound experience, spiritual experience, while also too seeing life as Maya, life as suffering, and without even fully living it, moving beyond it, escaping it, evolving, if you will, beyond it, and then coming back. And so in this time, especially before that happened, I really lived. Wild is not a description for it. I really lived as a young person, and was about as carnal as can be. And I think that there's value to that too. We don't come here to escape it, and that's such a strong line within a lot of religious context. It's so you can suffer through this so you can get there, so you can get to heaven, right? Or don't go to hell. But the idea is that both of them are here now, and it's your creation. And so my point with this is that even with that, with these bleed throughs, with the different connections, I'm creating my experience. There are a lot of influences, some chosen, some that I don't have control over as of now in my reality, in the sense of, the astrology that I was born into, which is fine by me. But it's not an overly challenging. There's some challenges to it, but not an overly challenging astrology. There are certain aspects that, as we are moving through life and are working with this practice, we can absolutely shift, and we can shift the severity of them. And so the example that I gave before, my mother showed up in dramatically different ways. Like it was a different person. It really was, truly. And whether I was skipping timelines along with this practice, in this practice, I'm actually skipping timelines, or it's actually laid out exactly how I said it, or both. Either way, your life improves, and you can control that, and you have control over that. And so the aspect of, I won't say forgiveness, the aspect of dropping judgment to the best that you can and working with it actively in its counterpart, not just the idea of like, I'm not going to judge, but like these really harsh, extreme situations. I'm an animal lover. My Everybody knows who knows me knows how I am with cats. I have a neighbor who seems to have a challenge with substances, and he also has some physical challenges. And he's an older guy, and to meet him, he's lovely. And immediately, when I became aware of this, I immediately felt compassion for him because I don't know his story at all. I don't know anything about him. But just to see his physical challenges, which appear that they might have been something that happened rather than born, into, um, may have caused or had him choose to go down a road of, challenge with substances. It's not, in most people's view, it's the common one that's not really severe. And so this is fine. And I've seen him multiple times, and I've often, tried to be helpful and gone out of my way to say hello and whatever. And I'm saying this because I thought, I didn't even think about it. That's just part of who I am. I was, giving him compassion. He's having a hard time, and like that sucks. And like, so, if he left his trash pails out like on garbage day, I'd bring them in to the side of his house for him if I was out there, getting mine, or little things like that. Gone out of my way to just say hello, little things like that, little things. He has a cat, which I was aware of. He started screaming at this cat, like laying into this cat. I didn't see anything. I could have, in a split second, ripped his heart out of his chest with my bare hands. Yeah. That's the ugly, right, in me. And I caught it. And then still, I heard the yelling. And then I heard the cat cry. And I don't know what happened. And it could have just been that he was barreling through. Hopefully, there was nothing physical done. And just like I went from like 0 to 100 and just severity in my mind in a split second. There wasn't even a conscious aspect to it again. It was a deep subconscious. It was like protective, and I want to go over there. And like, it wasn't even like a thought process. It wasn't even how I'm saying it now, because it was split second. It was just like, like mama bear. That's what I turn into. It's been said, and it's a very good description. I go into mama bear and I'll take your effing head off. Right? Hi. What a revealing episode. We all have it in us. If you think you don't, then you're someone to be afraid of. And it took all of the will that I could to take a deep breath. And as my heart is beating, and I'm just like internally, like just wanting, I just chose to Picture him glowing, light pouring out of every orifice of his body, streaming out his ears and his eyes and his mouth. He was so filled with light, he couldn't even contain it. And like halo and glorious, again, God man, right? And then I pictured him loving his cat. I don't even know what his cat looks like. I've never seen it, but I know there's a cat in there. I pictured a cat and him loving the cat and kissing the cat and loving the cat and a smile on his face, and he's happy and he could walk and comfortably and he could dance and he was holding his cat. A couple days passed. I was outside and I saw him pull up and I saw him go into the house, and before the door was even closed, I heard him yelling at the cat. So again, this was a little easier, but it's still hard. I pulled out my, okay, I'm gonna visualize him. This is very, very recent. Very recent. I haven't seen anything. This is as much about him as it is about me. Some people will say, either you should have done something, you should have called somebody, even though you don't know anything about what really happened and you didn't see anything. You should have said something to him. You could have said something to him. This was more about me than it was about him. And that's the difficult part of it. What I'm posing is that although he exists and he's having his experience, what I saw was a rearing of my ugliness, and not the ugly reaction that I saw, that I just described, but that hidden aspect of myself, which I was aware of. I'm aware of that aspect, but still, even being aware of it, that aspect within myself attracted the experience of me being in the place in order to witness that shown outwardly in a severe enough way. It wasn't that severe. It wasn't him physically abusing the animal on the front lawn, like that I could see, right? And I don't think that that's going on. I think he's having a really hard time, and I think he's just at his wit's end, kind of white knuckling it maybe through life, which I can definitely relate to in different periods of mine. And I think that the cat probably did something, shut up in the house all day while he's out at work or whatever he does. And the cat's, probably got into something or knocked something or did something because it's bored. Because you should never just leave an animal locked in your house all day. They're not stuffed animals. It's another conversation for another day. And I think that he was just reacting to it. Still, the light that I shone upon him and the visualization allows for an opportunity for him. It allows for a building of momentum in the opposite direction. In his line of potential, right, of going towards right or left, or and I'm not putting a value judgment of this decision or that decision. I like this decision. I'm shining a light there with my consciousness. This might land a couple of different ways, but if you get it, you get it. My consciousness, my conscious awareness has a stronger value than his unconscious awareness and has the ability to influence his awareness to a certain degree. this is a sticky point. I don't know if I'll edit that out. Um, don't play with that the wrong way. I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to choose to leave it in, and I'm going to trust in the internal awareness and guidance of the listener. If you play with that the wrong way, that is the bitch slap of karma like you have never felt. This man is struggling, and I don't want him to be struggling. And if he wasn't having such a hard time, if all of his circumstances were the same, but he was feeling differently, his reaction would be different, both for himself and his experience, as well as for his animal, his cat. And that's true with most, if not all, of the world. And so at the same time, too, look at the reaction that I had. I'm here doing a podcast and writing a book with the Yeshua and Mary Magdalene and whatever else, and channeling Buddha and Gautama, and could rip his heart out of his chest. It's real. So I'm shining a light on myself as well. And it's of both awareness as well as healing, in a sense. But the more aware of it that you are, the more that not only can you choose otherwise, but it softens. It softens. There are these hidden aspects that really have oftentimes, or repressed aspects that really have the most subconscious kind of forward drive and projection. Those are the things that get people in trouble. And our societal construct is somewhat at fault with that. But I wanted to address this because, again, the idea of knocking down ideas of gurus and gods and anything being above you is for many a lot easier than the idea that other things aren't below them. That, again, the axe murderer who just we'll just leave it at that, is not below them. Or figures that are going on in the news right now that are very triggering, right? These stories that are being uncovered and files that are redacted, and these characters that are coming to the forefront are not only characters and aspects and individuals in their own right, but they're also representatives of aspects of society that have been around for a long time, aspects of our collective. Even look at my reaction that I gave, right? In that moment, there was the idea of protector. Truly, my heart bleeds, right? For the animal. I want to protect this innocent thing. But then there was the revenge and the violent tendencies, right? Would I have gone through that? Of course not. Of course, I don't even think that I'm just skinny. I don't have the strength to rip his heart out of his chest, even if I wanted to. It's ridiculous, but it doesn't matter. That's the thing. It's we want to say oh, but we would never act on that, so it doesn't matter. But it does. If it's in there, then you don't get to judge. And if you're wise, you don't judge anyway. But we do, and that's part of our human experience. And this allows for self-growth, for knowing yourself deeper, and also too for the ability to shift the world. And I will say that one of the things that I really love, and this ties in, and then we'll close I've sent it around, and you know what? I'm actually going to post it to all of my socials this week. This came out a couple of years ago, and somebody created this little like video. It's all AI. This little video of Trump, and I think it's called like Trump does ayahuasca or Trump becomes a shaman. Maybe you've seen this. It's gone around quite a while. And basically, the setup is it shows Trump, and somebody tells him to do ayahuasca, and he goes down to the Amazon and has this ceremony. And in the ceremony, he's confronted with everything he's always done and his demons and his childhood and everything else, which is really interesting that they brought those things up, because they could have just gone right into like the rest of it, but they brought up, they emphasized his challenges with his childhood and where he came from and how that shaped him. And so he has this experience, and he decides to not only change everything around, but do the opposite. And then he works on learning every spiritual process and practice, and becomes, in his own way, he jokes and says, they say I'm the most powerful, shaman now. And it's kind of cheeky, it's kind of cute, but it's also, too, I think, a powerful, powerful tool. I think that sometimes people are inspired to do things and they don't realize why they might be inspired. And I think that sometimes we can look at things, and we could look at things from an entertainment or a shallow perspective and not see its deeper context or its potential. And I think that I'll pose that those kinds of things are actually powerful movers of energy, and can add to, especially with many eyes on it, can add to the building momentum of potential in that direction or a similar way. Imagine if these people, who some of us witness culturally as being in great positions of power and are often making a lot of mess, if they chose to do an about face and use that power in ways that were beneficial for all. And thinking of the John Lennon Imagine song, but it's true. You want to say I'm a dreamer. I think that that's equal in its potential. And if you can hold it as equal in its potential or even greater, and choose to add to it and to shine light upon that. And I think that I'm definitely going to post it. And I'm going to post it with the idea, I'll even put it on there, that whenever you're seeing this individual act in ways where you hear something that is really troubling, or ways which many would agree are not conducive to the well-being of all, other than love, that you look at this and hold that as a possibility for him. Because most people don't. Most people want to effing rip his heart out. Right? And where does it get us? More pain. So you take the person who's in such pain that he's on a grand scale acting it out, and you want to give him more pain. You want to hurt him. You want to make him go away. Right? Just look at that. We all do it. We all do it. And so what I'm finding is, for me, I was never caught up in celebrity. I was dancing at the limelight when Madonna was there, and Lady Keir from Delight. In my first jobs in New York City, I had celebrity clients coming out, major movie stars and stuff, and I was often given to work with them because I wasn't starstruck. I didn't act weird with them. Went out to LA when I was young and was seeing people, and really like the new hot hotel lounge. And So it's not it was never a thing for me. Although I get it, but it wasn't a thing for me. Mine was more the spiritual hierarchy because I was always looking for something that I was chasing what was the purest and most powerful expression, and that included those that worked with it. That was my game for a very long time, which I let go. And yeah, the judgment part is equal, and it's more challenging. It takes a little more effort, especially when there are these offenders or repeat offenders. But this is my last thought. I already said I was leaving. I was ending off, and we will with this. The way that you can gauge your progress is not in if, let's say, Trump becomes a shaman, right? Or has this about face. The way that you can gauge your progress rather than your end result is in your experience. And I hope you're not watching the news every day, but if you are, that's up to you. In your experience of what you live, does it feel like, and does it seem to be, that there is an increase in what is life-giving, an increase in what would be considered positive change, an increase in you're seeing more and more people doing wonderful things, an increase in you're seeing we're in the time exposing things of disclosure in all levels. So we're all experiencing information coming out. Are you experiencing that information? It's usually troubling or some troubling aspect to it, but are you experiencing this as a positive thing that good will come from? Or are you experiencing this revelation or this information as more evidence toward the hell that you're going towards, right? This is the gauge for you because this is what you're emanating truly. And I'm seeing vast improvement. I'm seeing the old guard like falling away, but as they do, their big greedy hands are gripping, gripping whatever they could with their relatively powerful, organized, greedy hands. As they're going down, they're just like clawing, trying to like grip and get as much more as they could. But it's all being seen. It's all being witnessed. It's not behind closed doors anymore. As they're doing it, they're being caught and they're being seen. And people are evaluating it. And there are people who are rising up. In every situation that's out there, there are already answers to. There's no aspects that can't be turned around. There's damage that was done, yes. And we all have to take responsibility because, our batteries come from the stuff in Congo. I mean, everybody knows that conversation, right? So it's like, what? So you don't use your phone? We don't have a choice. You're going to go back to a payphone, get a large string in a can? Like, what are you going to do? Do smoke signals and carrier pigeon? No. But you can look for solutions. You can look for those that are creating batteries out of algae. Are you aware of this? People that are creating alternatives to lithium batteries that are just as powerful out of like algae and things. Hydrogen, I mean, free energy devices that are plentiful. And there's so many. The near future has a lot of solution, and you have to just look for it. And you can't just allow yourself to be bombarded by the news or the algorithm that is not of your making. Took me a long time to get my Instagram the way I want it, and it can slip up at any moment. You have to be careful with it, and I enjoy it, and it brings such value to me. Seriously, like such value and wonderful things. But it's like tending a garden. You have to keep on tending it. And although I hate the idea of weeds and the conversation of weeds because they're native plants, but it's that concept. It's like you let the weeds come in, they sneak in, they're always sneaking in, and they'll take over. So I hope that this was valuable, as always. And I do recommend it for everyone. I believe in this, but I believe in the message. And so I really recommend that everybody goes out and gets theirs. And again, there are the QR codes which link to the recordings of the transcripts. With that, I hope you all have a good week. And if you've enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, comments, star, review. And until next time, my friends, I'm always here reminding you under all of this, we always come back to the reminder of all that you truly are and all that you are already connected to. Until next time.